May I also have the honor of inviting CA Devashish Mitra, Council Member ICI. A huge round of applause for both of them. I would now like to invite CA Pramodya Lungta, past Chairman ARC, to please welcome our speaker CA N.K. Poddar with the flower bouquet. A huge round of applause. May I now invite CA Subhash Chandra Saraf, past Chairman AIRC, to please give a flower bouquet to CA Devashish Mitra. A huge round of applause for sir.
ठीक है, उसका नाम नंबर ले लिया क्या? उसका नाम नंबर
I now hand over the session to CA Devashish Mitra.
क्या रिपोर्ट करेंगे? ठीक है ना, हम जाएगा।
Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good evening to all of you. One of the perks of being a Central Council member is that you get an opportunity to deliver a keynote address when Mr. N.K. Poddar is present. So many of us, even from the student days, we have been hearing Mr. N.K. Poddar, and see, despite being a Central Council member, I still consider myself to be a student. And I'm sure all of you who are here and is still waiting, it is only because you all want to hear Mr. N.K. Poddar speak. But I have been given another task, that's to deliver a keynote address, and I am not going to introduce Mr. N.K. Poddar. He requires no introduction, unless Sanjeev wants to do something. You want to introduce Sanjeev? All right. Sir, you will have the pleasure of introducing you. Sanjeev, please come. That is the one dangers of coming late. Come.
I sincerely apologize for the delay. Thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We all know that the speakers are in, and so I don't want to waste any more time on this. We are right now in front of Mr. N.K. Poddar, who is a very powerful intellectual, and we all are here to listen to him on the implications of direct taxation. He has passed the M.Com examinations from University of Calcutta in 1968, standing first in order of merit, and has awarded University Gold Medal. He also secured the first rank in the final examinations conducted by the Institute of Cost and Works Accountants of India held in July 1970, and was adjudged as the best student of the year 1970. He is a fellow member of ICI and ICWAI. He is also a member of the Institute of Management Accountants, US. He was an elected member of the Central Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India during the years 1982 to 1991 for 3 consecutive terms. He is a law graduate from the University of Calcutta and also a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries and the Managers. He is the past president of Association of Company Secretaries, Executives and Advisors, and life members of various associations. He is a designated senior advocate and specialized on direct taxation, corporate laws, and foreign exchange regulations. This is a real profound privilege for all of us to have in front of us. Please give a big round of applause for Mr. N.K. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. And I guess we have our own Central Council member, Mr. Devashish Mitra, who doesn't need any more introductions. And I'm really thankful to him who was actually doing what I was supposed to do. Thank you so much, Chairman, sir.
Thank you.
Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I see my friend Rishi Khator sitting in the front row here. When I was coming to this meeting, I was just talking to him about the provision relating to the dividend tax that we have. And so all the papers have been carrying this news. The provision that has been introduced in the budget is, if you're going to declare dividend after 1st of April 2016, and if the recipient has a dividend of more than 10 lakhs, suppose one individual shareholder has a dividend of more than 10 lakhs, then he has to pay 10% of the dividend that he gets in addition to the company bearing the dividend distribution tax. My question to Rishi was that suppose my dividend, the amount that this individual shareholder gets is 11 lakhs. And do I pay 10% of 1 lakh, that is the additional amount beyond 10 lakhs? Or do I pay 11 lakhs on 10% of 11 lakhs? And the way it has been framed, it appears that you have to pay dividend on 10% of the entire 11 lakhs that you get. And today there is a flurry of activities. Everybody wants to call a board meeting before 31st of March 2016 and declare interim dividend to escape from the clutches of this 10% extra dividend, extra tax that an individual shareholder might have to pay. 2 points again, section 44 ADA, which is affecting us. They are saying that if your receipts are up to 50 lakhs and if you are a professional, and in that case you can go for a presumptive taxation provided your income is 50% of the receipts. That is, if you have got an income, total receipts of 40 lakhs, and if you disclose an income of 20 lakhs on that, in that case you don't have to maintain books of accounts and it will be totally accepted. Now the question is, how many of us are going to pay 50% of the receipts and disclose that for taxation? I think it is highly arbitrary kind of provision. But they are again telling us that if in that case, if you don't declare 50% of the receipts as your tax, for taxation, in that case you go for tax audit. Please note, earlier the tax audit limit for professionals was 25 lakhs, the limit. Now they have enhanced it to 50 lakhs to make it correspond to section 44 ADA. So they have, but the tax audit limit, the 1 crore has not really gone up. But this 44 ADA, they have, you see, the professional tax audit limit they have enhanced. So now see, but the greatest relief for many of us is they have not changed the definition of accountant as contained in section 280 of the Income Tax Act. There was a huge pressure on the government that you see that the definition of accountant should be changed and some of the other professionals like cost accountants and all this, they should be included in the definition of accountants so that they can also carry out the tax audit. Thank God, and I think the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has played a very important role in this. The definition of accountant still stands wherever it was in the past. Two small points which I would like to, before Mr. N.K. Poddar starts speaking, these are questions that I'm asking about from him. Sir, see, this is regarding the Direct Tax Dispute Resolution Scheme 2016. Now, they are saying that, you see, if you are having, the first one is the direct tax dispute. If you are having a dispute before the CIT appeals and the dispute is pending as on 29th of February 2016, in that case, you can pay your tax, the interest up to the assessment, and if your tax is more than 10 lakhs, you can pay 25% of the penalty and the whole matter gets withdrawn. So my two questions are there. First of all, they are saying that the dispute should be pending before the CIT appeals. They are not talking about the tribunal. So it should be pending before the CIT appeals. I believe that the dispute pending before the tribunal doesn't come on this. And somebody is telling me also that looks good thing. Now, see many people, they are having this assessment proceedings taking place now. They are saying that look, I can also avail of this. But they are saying that the dispute should have been pending before the CIT appeals as on 29th of February 2016. So, you see, existing cases, you cannot have, you see, it should have been pending as on 29th of February 2016. And those of us who are doing a lot of assessment cases, scrutiny assessments now, I'm sure, see, for assessment year 13-14, now we are all under pressure because every income tax officer wants to complete that by 31st of March 2016. Now from assessment year 2017-18, that period, that you see 24 months from the end of assessment year that was there, that period has been shortened to 21 months. So in the future, they will have to complete the assessment by 31st of December and not by 31st of March, which they are doing today. Lot of changes, ladies and gentlemen. And I do not want to come in between you and Mr. N.K. Poddar. And as I've said, I continue to be a student and looking forward to listening to him. And I'm sure we will all enjoy his deliberations. Thank you very much. May I now request Mr. N.K. Poddar to kindly address the gathering.
Chairman of the session, Mr. Devashish Mitra, and my fellow audience, fellow members of my institute in the audience. It gives me great pleasure to talk to you this evening on the Finance Bill 2016, insofar as it relates to the provisions relating to direct taxation. Since very large number of amendments have been made, kindly do not mind a little bad throat I am having for the last 2 days. Continuously I have been arguing from 10:30 to 4:15 in the division bench of the High Court and addressing meetings after meetings yesterday and then today. I came here straight from the High Court, and that's why a little bad throat. It is not practically feasible to discuss all the amendments which have been proposed by the Finance Minister in the Finance Bill. I would like to take some of the important amendments, 3-4 amendments I have in mind, and I will start with each one of them. First of all, since the chairman mentioned about the new scheme for dispute resolution, I will go into that scheme. I will also go into the income declaration scheme of 2016. These are the two very hot subjects set out in the Finance Bill. And thereafter, subject to time permitting, I will go into the proposed amendments relating to charitable trust and ban and teach. So let us start with the income declaration scheme. Friends, clauses 178 to 196 of the Finance Bill deal with the income declaration scheme. Now, what is this income declaration scheme? Let us first of all try to understand it in very simple terms. The objective of the scheme is to enable the SSAs to make a declaration of one's hitherto undeclared income. But let me tell you at the very outset, this is not like VDIS scheme. It is completely different from the VDIS scheme as such. But putting it in simple words, yesterday I was arguing before the division bench, and at about 4 o'clock I requested the bench that would my lords permit me to leave 15 minutes earlier, because I have to address some of the meetings on the budget, on the Finance Bill. Justice Gupta, presiding over the bench, division bench, told me, Mr. Poddar, please address us first on the budget. And I had to spend 10-12 minutes addressing my Lord Justice Gupta and my Lord Justice Bennett to give to the government 55% you retain. So what could be more simpler than this? Well, this is the simplest way in which one can describe the income declaration scheme. All that it says, if you have not declared your income or assets in the past, you are given another opportunity to do so now. unlike the VDIs scheme, you have got to pay tax at the current rate, namely 30%, and that 25% of 30%, namely 7.5%, would be by way of surcharge, but told here as cess, Krishi Kalyan cess, because they want to give some importance to the agriculture. So many names are given to various cess and surcharge. I doubt whether any of them are actually going to the proper genuine. It is easier to name any scheme, any tax, any surcharge, any cess by a particular name, but it is difficult to examine and certify that the amount has actually gone to that sector. Anyway, the intention of the government is that by 2022, the income of the farmers must be doubled, so that give them all the benefits that they deserve. And I believe this 7.5% of the of the tax on the undeclared income is likely to feed the farmers sector, namely the agricultural sector. So 30% income tax, 7.5% cess, call it Krishi cess or agricultural cess, and another 25% of 30%, that means further 7.5% by way of penalty. The whole purpose is you pay 45%, 30% plus 7.5% plus another 7.5%, in all 30 plus 15, that means 45%, and you can very well retain the balance 55% for yourself. The narration in the finance bill says that the scheme is proposed to be effective from 1st June 2016. The reason being, until the finance bill is passed, no such scheme can come into operation. Last time, you remember, there was a VDIs scheme which was circulated and initiated by the board through administrative circular. And lot of problems arose even in the Supreme Court as to whether you can initiate a disclosure scheme through a board circular. This time they do not want to take any chance. They gave an undertaking to the Supreme Court. They would never bring any disclosure scheme letter, because there was a lot of criticism. When you bring disclosure scheme, you give them all immunities, and this is unfair to those who are declaring their income correctly. You are giving a premium to those who have not been truthful and who have not made truthful disclosure in the past. And that is the reason why the government this year, in addition to 30%, is also putting another 7.5%, 25% of 30% by way of penalty, to tell the Supreme Court we are charging penalty also to the tax, to erstwhile tax evaders. We are not charging only income tax from them. Yesterday, in one of the meetings, a question was asked, why should I pay 45% if I declare extra income in the current year? That means assessment year 2016-17, if I declare 5 crore extra income and I pay tax at the rate of 30%, who prevents me from doing so? I gave the answer. Well, you can definitely credit your accounts with another 5 crore to your capital account and offer to pay tax in your return of income to be filed. First of all, in addition to 30%, since you have not paid advance tax in the earlier 2 or 3 installments as the case may be, the advance tax interest 234B, 234C will have to be paid in addition to 30%. This is one part. The second part is, you will have to explain to the assessing officer as to what is the source out of which you got this 5 crore. And you will have to fight another litigation with the tax authorities, because no assessing officer will accept your disclosure per se. He will say, no, you must have earned 10 crores you are declaring 5 crores only. I am adding 10 crores. 5 crore my estimate. You show that you earned only 5 crore in the past and not 10 crore. And then the litigation follows. Penalty proceedings are initiated and you carry on. Here is a case where if you make a declaration under this scheme, you don't have to answer any question. You don't have to face any investigation. You don't have to face any inquiry as to why you are declaring this or where from you earned this. You are required under law, whenever you show any income, the particulars of the income. If you read section 271, subsection 1 clause C, which deals with levy of penalty. Penalty can be levied not only for concealment of income, but also for not disclosing the correct particulars of income or disclosing inaccurate particulars of income. In other words, particulars of income are also required to be disclosed in addition to the quantum of income. Otherwise, you may face penalty. There have been cases. Take for instance the judgment of the Supreme Court in Sumati Dayal's case, which is an oft-repeated judgment by the tax authorities day in and day out in passing Section 263 order in share capital cases. I am myself on my legs in the High Court for last 3 days on Section 263 or against Section 263 orders, which were confirmed by the tribunal by a long order of 164 pages, and I am arguing against that in the High Court. Sumati Dayal's case is one of the decisions which is oft repeated. Now what had happened in that case? Sumati Dayal, the wife of the assessee, had declared some income from race winnings. She claimed that I won it in the races. She was asked to produce evidence. She produced those 2, 3, 5 tickets where first prize was allotted to her. Now, the allegation of the department was she knew nothing about the races and that these prizes must have been won by somebody else, but she is declaring those prizes to be her own and that she has purchased these tickets from the person who has actually won the prize. She was asked questions by the tax authorities that, tell me, what do you know about the double event and the triple event? How is it that in every race you won the very first prize? Your horse went to won the very first prize. In fact, I must tell you, I know nothing about the races. Sometimes 50 years back, I must tell you, not 50, 45 years back. Sometimes in 1972 or near about 1972, one racehorse owner, at that time Brijendra Singh Bala, I remember, I was told that he owns 90% of the races of the horses in this country, India. So he was in tax trouble, and his appeal was to be argued in the income tax tribunal at Chandigarh. And he telephoned me through one of the commissioner of income tax. Commissioner telephoned me, Mr. Poddar, will you go to Chandigarh to argue the case of one of my friend? I said, I will go. Then I am asking my friend to telephone you. He telephoned me. Mr. Vijendra Singh Bala said, Mr. Poddar, my case is one of racing. I said, Mr. Bala, I know nothing about racing. I don't know ABCD. I have never visited race course. So how will I argue your case? He said, don't worry. I will pick you up from the airport in Delhi, take you to Chandigarh by car, and during the 4 hours drive in those days, I will make you an expert in racing. I am telling you a real lifetime situation. So, Mr. Bala drove me to his farmhouse at Chandigarh. I went there, and 2 members of the tribunal were there. My opposite side revenue was being represented by one lady, and I started my arguments. First day the argument went on, in the second day also it went on. Third day the learned member asked me, Mr. Podar, you seem to have very thorough knowledge of racing. I said, sir, I have never visited the race course. It is all tutored to me. I don't even know what is double event or triple event. I don't know anything about this. But I have been told this is so. But no, after hearing you, it does not appear that you know nothing about racing. I believe you are an expert in racing. So in Sumati Dehal's case, perhaps the lady was not tutored well. So when she was being examined, she was unable to answer any question. And ultimately, the authorities held, well, this is a bogus case of race winning. The lady does not know anything about the racing. The prizes must have been won by somebody else, and that she has declared it as her own income. Now what I was trying to say, that if you make a disclosure in your return of total income in respect of an amount without disclosing the source thereof, you may be in for a bigger problem. So therefore it may not be advisable under the normal sequence to declare some figure in your tax return without giving the particulars of your income, because you are otherwise required to give your particulars. In the scheme, if you go, you don't have to do anything. You have to pay this 45%, I call it tax, interest and penalty, tax as penalty, by the notified date meaning thereby the date to be notified by the central government in the official gazette while circulating this scheme. This scheme will be through an official, the scheme will be enacted through the parliament, through the finance bill, and then a notification will come in relation to the scheme. Now what are the advantages? First, no wealth tax. That means if the income that you have earned in the past had been invested in some assets and such assets were chargeable to wealth tax, you don't have to pay any wealth tax. 45% once for all. No wealth tax. No inquiry or scrutiny. Immunity from prosecution and also from Benami Prohibition Act. I tell you, you must be knowing, in 1988, Benami Prohibition Act was passed. I purchased a property in the name of X. I have made the funds. I have provided the funds. But I am purchasing the property in the name of X. Those were days when there was urban land ceiling and so on. So people were purchasing properties in third parties' name. Now there, the government enacted the law that if you are not the real owner, if you are holding the property in the Benami name of another person, and it is coming to light and if it is proved, the property will rest in the government and you cannot force the third party in whose name you purchase the property to convey that property in your name. That is Benami Prohibition Act. But this scheme gives you immunity not only from prosecution but also from Benami Prohibition Act, in the sense that the provisions of Benami Prohibition Act would not apply if the assets which are represented by income declared by you under this scheme is invested in any property and which is held in Benami name. You can force the Benami person to transfer that property to you. Next, the declaration would be void if there is misrepresentation or suppression of facts. Obviously, you must make a truthful and full disclosure, no misrepresentation, no suppression of facts. Otherwise, the declaration would be held to be invalid. Next, no benefit, concession or immunity to any person other than the declarant. This is very important. Just understand this. I am the declarant. I have made a declaration saying that I have advanced a loan out of my black money to Mr. X. I have not recorded this in my books of account, but Mr. X has recorded it in his books of accounts. Now if I make the declaration, my money that I had invested by way of advancing loan to X, that gets declared and I am free. But in the hands of X, who has recorded that borrowing in his books of accounts in my name, he cannot claim immunity on the ground that Mr. Podar has already made a declaration and that scheme, and therefore this is the source. No, because he is not the declarant. Advantage he cannot claim. He cannot claim any immunity, concession or benefit because of my declaration. I alone can claim the benefit of immunity, concession or benefit by making my disclosure, not he. Then, if the income chargeable to tax is invested in some form, in kind, and I am today declaring that kind, say for instance, I purchased a property out of my undeclared income, and that property I am now disclosing under this scheme. Now what have I to disclose? The property was purchased by me, let's say 50 lakhs. Today's market value may be 10 lakhs, today's market value may be 5 crores. Do I have to pay tax on 50 lakhs or 5 lakhs or 5 crores? This is the question which arises as a very serious question. And the scheme gives the answer. I have to declare the fair market value of that property on 1st of June 2016, the day on which the scheme is to come into force. The question will be, how do I determine fair market value? Who will accept my declaration? The scheme says the notification which will be published by the government will lay down the procedure for determination of the fair market value. And I will have my fair market value determined on the basis of what is set out in that notification. Following that, if I do so, I have to declare fair market value. So I have to declare today's value. Today's value meaning value as on 1st of June 2016 and not what I have invested. No deduction or expenditure or allowance is permissible against what I declare. Take for instance, I have purchased this property. I paid, let's say, 5 lakh by way of brokerage or commission to somebody. I cannot claim this brokerage or commission by way of deduction. No, I cannot. I have to make declaration of the gross fair market value of the property and pay 45% thereon. Now, there have been cases in the past. Can you make multiple declarations? Can you revise your declaration? Like you revise your return of total income. You find any error, you find any mistake, can you correct it? You have filed a declaration disclosing X amount. Later on you come to know, oh, I made a mistake. I should have disclosed X plus Y. Or I should not have disclosed X. X is already there. I should have disclosed Y. No, nothing doing. One declaration, once for all. No revision, no multiple declaration. If I do so, everything will be held to be void. So only one declaration, once for all. Then I cannot seek any relief or set off in any appeal or other proceeding. I cannot. This is a declaration of something which is undeclared, which is not known. A dispute which is pending in appeal, which is pending in any proceeding, I cannot come forward and now declare. Then that proceeding, that appeal will take care of whatever is to happen, will happen.